Hey guys, tonight we step quietly into the Ottoman Empire, where the streets of Istanbul are still busy, lanterns flicker against stone walls, and somewhere nearby workers are already beginning another long day. You can almost hear carts rolling over uneven roads, footsteps crossing courtyards, shipbuilders calling to one another near the water, and the distant sounds of a city that seems to have no intention of going to sleep. You are about to discover a side of the Ottoman world that grand palaces and beautiful mosques rarely show you, the exhausting jobs that kept an enormous empire functioning. And if you are imagining yourself waking up tomorrow as a powerful sultan, relax. Your historical career is taking a much less glamorous direction. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what your local time is. It is always fascinating to imagine these stories traveling across different cities, countries, and time zones, while everyone slowly gets ready for sleep. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. For a moment, imagine that you are standing beside the Bosphorus centuries ago. The air is cool, carrying the smell of water, wood smoke, spices, animals, and thousands of people beginning their routines. Istanbul stretches around you as a complicated maze of neighborhoods, markets, workshops, docks, gardens, religious buildings, government offices, and crowded streets. The Ottoman Empire is enormous. Its territories reach across southeastern Europe, Anatolia, the Middle East, North Africa, and beyond at different points in its long history. Goods travel across seas and caravan routes. Soldiers move between distant provinces. Farmers cultivate fields far from the capital. Ships cross the Mediterranean. Craftspeople work in small workshops. Porters carry loads through narrow streets. Servants maintain wealthy households. Sailors keep vessels moving. Builders repair roads, bridges, walls, fountains, and public buildings. And underneath all of it is labor. Lots and lots of labor. You might normally imagine history through rulers, battles, treaties, and magnificent architecture. But buildings do not rise because someone merely dreams about them. Ships do not move because an admiral looks impressive standing on a dock. Food does not appear in palace kitchens by magic. Streets do not clean themselves. Water does not walk into someone's courtyard carrying its own container. Someone has to do the work. And tonight, unfortunately for you, that someone is you. You begin with very little. There is no modern alarm clock waiting beside your bed. No soft mattress designed to support your back. No refrigerator humming quietly in the corner. No electric light brightening the room when the sun disappears. No convenient button that summons transportation, food, heating, cooling, or entertainment. Instead, your day is governed by daylight, weather, local customs, religious routines, work schedules, and whoever happens to be supervising you. The exact experience depends enormously on your location, occupation, social position, gender, period, and circumstances. The Ottoman Empire lasted for more than 6 centuries, so there was never one single Ottoman working life. A laborer in 16th century Istanbul did not necessarily experience the same world as a farmer in the Balkans centuries later. Still, there is one thing you can safely expect. Work is physical. Even tasks that sound ordinary require more effort than you might expect. You need to move things manually. You walk more. You wait more. You rely on other people more. A broken tool cannot always be replaced immediately. A delayed shipment can disrupt an entire routine. Rain can turn a road into mud. Heat can make an already difficult task miserable. And because transportation is slow, distance matters. A few miles can become a serious journey when you are carrying something heavy. A workday can begin before you feel ready. You might wake in a cramped room while the sky is still dark. The building around you is quiet, but outside, the city is beginning its slow awakening. Someone opens a door. Somewhere a donkey complains. A cart rattles along the street. A baker begins preparing bread. A boat shifts against its mooring. You lie there for a moment, hoping you have somehow misunderstood the schedule. You have not. Eventually, you stand. There is no gentle transition into the morning. You wash as best you can, dress in whatever clothing belongs to your position, eat something if food is available, and prepare yourself for the first task. The work itself may not seem extraordinary when described in one sentence. Carry goods. Prepare food. Repair a road. Work in a workshop. Row a ship. Deliver water. But history has a funny habit of hiding exhaustion inside simple verbs. Carry. lift, pull, push, walk, dig, cut, stir, repeat. Again, and again, and again. The Ottoman economy depended on countless people performing these movements every day. Some workers were highly skilled artisans whose knowledge had been passed down through apprenticeships and guild traditions. Others performed heavy manual labor, requiring strength and endurance more than specialized training. Some worked for private employers. Some served institutions. Some were attached to military or administrative systems. Others survived through farming, seasonal work, small trade, or combinations of occupations. The empire's great cities created especially complicated working environments. Istanbul was not simply a palace surrounded by empty streets. It was a living city. Markets needed supplies. Houses needed fuel. Workshops needed raw materials. Ships needed timber and rope. Public buildings needed maintenance. People needed bread, water, clothing, tools, and transportation. Every morning, thousands of ordinary workers helped make all of that possible. You begin walking through the city. The streets are uneven beneath your feet. You pass walls darkened by age and weather. Wooden houses lean toward narrow lanes. Small shops open their shutters. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The smell changes every few steps. Fresh bread, animal dung, wood smoke, spices, leather, sea air, human sweat. You realize that the romantic version of historical Istanbul has left out several important smells. You keep walking. Your first destination is somewhere much more organized than the street outside, a workplace connected to the imperial household, the palace. But you are not going to meet the Sultan. You are going to meet the people who make sure everyone around him can eat. And that means entering a world of heat, hierarchy, knives, enormous quantities of food, strict routines, and workers who cannot simply decide that today they are feeling a little tired. The palace kitchens are waiting. You take one last breath of relatively cool morning air. Then you step inside. The temperature rises almost immediately, and your first hard Ottoman job is about to begin. The palace kitchens are louder than you expected. You step inside and immediately realize that this is not the peaceful, elegant palace you imagine from paintings. There are no quiet trays of delicate food appearing from nowhere. Instead, you find movement everywhere. Workers hurry between rooms. Copper vessels shine beneath the dim light. Fires burn constantly. Steam hangs in the air. Someone is carrying ingredients. Someone else is cutting them. Another worker is stirring something in an enormous pot that seems large enough to bathe in. And you have barely arrived. The kitchens connected with the imperial household were part of a huge organization responsible for feeding the palace community. The famous imperial kitchens at Topkapi Palace could operate on a remarkable scale, producing enormous quantities of food for people connected to the court. You are not going to be handed a comfortable position. Instead, you are placed somewhere near the bottom of the working routine. Your first task is simple. Carry. Someone points toward a stack of supplies. You look at it. Then you look at the person giving the order. Then back at the supplies. There is a moment when you consider pretending you did not understand. Unfortunately, the Ottoman workplace has defeated your strategy before you even begin. You lift the first load. It is heavier than it looks. You adjust your grip and start walking. The floor is busy. People move around you constantly, and you quickly learn that carrying something through a crowded kitchen requires more than strength. You have to watch your feet, avoid knocking into other workers, and somehow keep the contents from spilling. You reach the destination. Before you can celebrate, another load is waiting. This is the secret of hard historical labor. The individual task is rarely dramatic. The repetition is what defeats you. One container becomes 10. 10 becomes dozens. The kitchen never seems to reach a natural ending. Food preparation is tied to time. People need to eat, and the people being fed cannot simply decide to postpone lunch because the kitchen workers are tired. You move again. Perhaps you help prepare vegetables. You wash them, sort them, carry them, cut them, move them toward another worker. Then you begin again. The work requires attention because food preparation is not merely about producing something edible. Large institutional kitchens have routines, standards, storage concerns, and hierarchies. Different workers have different responsibilities, and experience matters. You quickly discover that everyone seems to know what they are doing except you. That is another problem with historical workplaces. There is no online tutorial, no search engine, no instructional video. If you do not know how something is done, you watch someone who does. And you had better watch carefully. Your hands become busy. The smell of onions fills the room. Then garlic. Then herbs. Then meat cooking over heat. The aroma is pleasant for approximately 30 seconds. After that, the heat becomes the main thing you notice. The fire never seems far away. Your face feels warm. Your clothes collect the smells of cooking. Your hands become tired. You drink water whenever you get the opportunity. But the work continues. You begin to understand why kitchen workers needed endurance. Modern cooking can involve machines that reduce physical effort. Mixers knead. Refrigerators preserve. Ovens maintain steady temperatures. Food processors chop. Dishwashers handle mountains of dirty plates. Here, much of that work belongs to human hands. You lift. You stir. You chop. You clean. You carry. And when one task finishes, another appears. The hierarchy is impossible to ignore. You are not the person making decisions. You are one part of a much larger system. Someone supervises the work. Other workers have specialized responsibilities. Experience gives certain people authority. Younger or newer workers may perform more basic tasks while learning the rhythms of the kitchen. You discover that skill is not just knowing how to cook. Skill is knowing how the entire workplace moves. You learn when to step aside, when to carry something, where to place it, who is waiting, which ingredients belong where, how quickly a task needs to be completed, and, perhaps most importantly, how not to become the person everyone has to wait for. You become increasingly aware of your feet. They hurt. You have been standing and moving for hours. There is no comfortable office chair waiting for you. No 5-minute scroll through your phone. No notification reminding you that you have been working too long. You simply continue. At some point, you look toward an opening where daylight enters. Outside, Istanbul is still moving. Inside, the kitchen remains almost timeless. Morning becomes afternoon. You may have imagined palace life as luxurious. And for the people at the top of the palace hierarchy, there could certainly be enormous privilege. But the existence of luxury creates work for someone else. Fine meals require preparation. Clean rooms require cleaning. Supplies require transportation. Buildings require maintenance. Clothing requires production. Messages require delivery. The grand appearance of the palace depends on thousands of ordinary actions happening correctly. And you are beginning to understand an uncomfortable historical truth. The more impressive the institution, the more invisible labor may be required to keep it running. Eventually, the pace slows slightly. You think you are finished. Then someone points toward a pile of used vessels. You stare at them. They stare back. There are many. You begin cleaning. Water splashes. Your arms work. The copper surfaces require attention. You scrub until your hands feel stiff. You rinse. You move the vessel. Take another. Repeat. You begin wondering whether the Ottoman Empire has secretly organized its entire civilization around making you carry and clean things. Then you remember that tomorrow will probably involve something else. Perhaps another worker will take your place. Perhaps you will learn a more specialized task. Perhaps you will remain in routine labor. Your exact future is uncertain. But one thing is becoming clear. The palace does not care that your feet hurt. The palace needs food. And food needs workers. As evening approaches, the kitchen slowly changes rhythm. The light outside fades. The fires remain. You finally step away from the work area. Your clothing smells like smoke and cooking. Your shoulders ache. Your feet are tired. You walk toward the quieter part of the building and allow yourself a moment to breathe. You have survived your first hard job. Barely. But the empire is not finished with you. Tomorrow, you will leave the palace kitchens behind. You will travel toward the water. There, among ships, ropes, timber, shouting sailors, and restless waves, you will discover a completely different kind of exhaustion. Because the next job does not merely require you to stand all day. It requires you to move a ship with your own strength. And when the oars enter the water, you will discover that the sea has no sympathy for tired workers. The next morning, you wake to the sound of water, not rain, the steady slap of small waves against wooden boats. You are near the harbor now, and the air feels completely different from the warm, smoky atmosphere of the palace kitchens. Here the wind carries salt, tar, wet timber, fish, and the unmistakable smell of a working waterfront. You stand near the edge of the dock and look toward the vessels waiting on the water. Some are small, others are enormous by the standards of their time. Among them is a galley. Long, low, and built for movement, it looks less like the graceful sailing ships you might imagine, and more like a long wooden platform designed to turn human effort into motion. And that is where you are going. You have been assigned to the rowing crew. For a moment, you simply stare at the ship. Then you notice the oars. They are long, very long, and there are many of them. You immediately understand that the job will involve your arms. You just wish someone had worn the rest of your body. You step aboard. The wooden deck shifts gently beneath your feet. Ropes lie coiled nearby. Barrels and supplies are secured around the vessel. Sailors move quickly, checking equipment and preparing the ship. Nobody seems interested in your nervous expression. That is probably because everyone else has work to do. You are directed toward your place. There is a bench. You sit. The space is tighter than you expected. The oar rests beside you. You grip it. It is heavier than it appears. The ship begins to move. At first, the motion is gentle. The water opens ahead. You hear the creaking of timber. Then comes the command to row. You pull. The oar enters the water. You push with your legs. Pull with your arms. Lean back. Return. Again. The first few strokes are manageable. You begin thinking that perhaps everyone has exaggerated the difficulty. Then the pace increases. Again, pull. Return. Pull. Return. The movement becomes repetitive almost immediately. You begin to understand why coordinated rowing matters. One person cannot simply choose their own rhythm. If everyone rows differently, the vessel loses efficiency. The oars need to enter and leave the water together. Your body becomes part of a larger machine. The ship moves because hundreds of individual movements become one movement. That sounds impressive. It feels exhausting. The morning sun climbs higher. Your shoulders begin to notice. Then your back. Then your hands. The wooden handle presses against your palms. You shift your grip. A few minutes later, you shift it again. You look toward another worker. He continues without looking at you. Apparently, this is normal. You begin to wonder whether historical workers possessed some secret reserve of energy that modern people have somehow misplaced. Then you realize the answer is simpler. They were accustomed to physical work. You are not. Your body has spent years enjoying chairs, beds, vehicles, elevators, and convenient machines. The Ottoman worker beside you may have spent much of life walking, lifting, carrying, rowing, farming, building, or performing other physical tasks. The difference is enormous. Still, even experienced workers would become tired. Rowing is not effortless simply because someone is used to it. It requires repeated muscular effort and careful coordination. The ship moves across the water. The shoreline slowly changes. Istanbul begins to look different from here. The buildings become part of a distant landscape. Minarets rise above rooftops. Domes catch the sunlight. Small boats move between larger vessels. The Bosphorus stretches ahead, blue and restless. For a moment, the view is beautiful. You almost forget your aching arms. Almost. Then the next command comes. You row again. Hours pass in fragments. You cannot measure time easily because the movement consumes your attention. Pull. Return. Pull. Return. The sound becomes almost hypnotic. Wood creaks. Water splashes. Oars strike the surface. Voices call instructions. The wind moves through the rigging. The ship continues forward. If you were watching from shore, the scene might look almost peaceful. That is one of history's tricks. Distance makes hard work look beautiful. A ship gliding across blue water appears graceful. You do not see the tired workers beneath that graceful movement. You do not feel the strain in their shoulders. You do not hear the repeated breathing. You simply see the vessel moving. From your bench, the illusion disappears. You know exactly what makes the ship move. Human effort. Eventually, food arrives. The rowing pauses briefly. You sit still. That feels strange. After hours of movement, stillness almost feels uncomfortable. You eat quickly. There is no reason to linger. The ship has a schedule. The sea has its own demands. Weather can change. Wind can strengthen. Currents can alter the journey. A vessel carrying people and supplies cannot simply stop because everyone would enjoy a longer lunch. You return to your place. The afternoon brings heat. The wooden deck becomes warm beneath you. Sunlight reflects from the water. Your clothing feels heavier. You take another drink. Then the rhythm begins again. Pull. Return. Pull. Return. The repetition becomes strangely calming after a while. Your mind stops fighting it. You stop thinking about how many strokes remain. You focus only on the next one. Then the next. Then the next. Perhaps this is how people survived demanding work, not by constantly imagining the end, but by concentrating on the immediate task. One movement. One load. One step. 1 hour. Then another. As the sun begins to descend, the atmosphere changes. The harsh brightness softens. The water turns golden. The skyline becomes darker against the evening sky. You are exhausted. But the ship continues. You look around at the other workers. Some appear equally tired. Yet there is little drama, no grand speech, no heroic music. Just people doing what needs to be done. This is another part of history that is easy to miss. Most difficult work was not performed during famous moments. It happened on ordinary days. The same movements, the same tools, the same responsibilities. Over and over. A worker might spend years performing tasks that historians later summarize in a single sentence. Rowers propelled the vessel. That sentence hides everything. The cramped seating, the heavy oars, the heat, the cold, the noise, the repetition, the tired hands, the long hours, the dependence on everyone around you, and the uncertainty of the sea. Eventually, the vessel slows. You finally place the oar down. Your arms feel strangely light without it. You stand carefully. For a second, your legs feel uncertain beneath you. You step onto the dock. The ground does not move. That feels wonderful. You walk a few steps. Your entire body wants to stop. But the harbor is still busy. Workers are unloading supplies. Ropes are being secured. Barrels are being moved. Sailors are checking equipment. The workday may be ending for you, but the waterfront is not yet asleep. You look back at the galley. From a distance, it is simply a wooden ship resting peacefully beside the dock. You know better now. You know how much effort is hidden inside its movement. You also know something else. Tomorrow, your job will change again. You will not be rowing. You will be walking through the crowded streets of Istanbul, carrying loads that seem determined to become heavier with every step. And somehow, the empire expects you to keep going. By the time you reach the streets of Istanbul, you have already learned an important lesson about Ottoman work. Nothing stays still for long. The harbor is behind you, the palace kitchens are far away, and now the city itself becomes your workplace. You are going to become a porter. At first, the job sounds almost embarrassingly simple. You carry things from one place to another. That is it. No complicated machinery, no mysterious technique. Just carrying. Then you see what you are expected to carry. A merchant points toward a large sack. You lift it, or, more accurately, you attempt to lift it. Your knees bend. Your arms tighten. You get it off the ground. For a moment you feel victorious. Then you realize you still have to walk. The streets of Istanbul are not designed like modern roads. They twist. They narrow. They rise and fall. Some are paved, some are rough, and some can become unpleasantly muddy after rain. You adjust the load against your body and begin moving. The first few steps are fine. Then the weight starts to matter. Your shoulders tighten, your back begins to complain. Your breathing becomes heavier. You keep walking. Around you, the city continues with complete indifference. A shopkeeper opens his stall. A baker carries bread. A donkey refuses to cooperate with its owner. A group of pedestrians squeezes past you. You move sideways to make room. The sack shifts. You catch it. And suddenly you understand that carrying a heavy object is not just about strength. Balance matters. Footing matters. Knowing the streets matters. Knowing where you are going matters. A porter who loses control of a valuable load does not merely have an embarrassing moment. The goods may be damaged. The customer may be unhappy. The employer may be unhappy, and you will probably be the person blamed for all three. So you continue carefully. You pass through a market. The smell changes again. Spices, bread, coffee, animals, leather, wood smoke. The noise is constant. Merchants call out. Customers bargain. Carts move through the crowd. People talk over one another. And somehow, you are expected to carry your load through all of this without knocking anyone over. You begin to appreciate the skill of experienced porters. They seem to know how to move through crowds without stopping. They turn their shoulders at exactly the right moment. They shift their weight before climbing a slope. They choose paths that avoid unnecessary congestion. They know where the pavement is uneven. They know which streets are steep. They know where carts are likely to appear. You, meanwhile, are discovering that your own feet have become unreliable advisors. You climb a hill. The load feels heavier. The street continues upward. You look ahead. Still more hill. You briefly wonder whether Istanbul has personally decided to test your character. It has. At the top, you stop for a moment. You are not supposed to stop for long. But you need to breathe. You look across the rooftops. The city spreads in every direction. Domes rise above buildings. Minarets reach into the sky. The Bosphorus glitters in the distance. For a few seconds, the view is beautiful enough to make you forget your shoulders. Then you remember the sack. You continue. This is what makes historical labor difficult to understand from a modern perspective. We often imagine the past through objects. A wooden cart, a basket, a clay jar, a sack, a barrel, a bundle. The object looks harmless. But someone had to move it. And without forklifts, elevators, trucks, or modern warehouse systems, human bodies carried a remarkable amount of the world's goods. Porters were essential to urban life. Goods arriving at a harbor needed to reach markets. Supplies needed to reach workshops. Food needed to reach kitchens. Fuel needed to reach households. Materials needed to reach construction sites. The city depended on movement. And you are now one of the people responsible for that movement. You arrive at a merchant's warehouse. You lower the sack. Your shoulders immediately feel lighter. You think you are finished. The merchant points toward another load. Of course. You pick it up. This one is different. Longer. Awkward. Not necessarily heavier, but more difficult to balance. You carry it through another street. Then another. The afternoon heat grows stronger. Stone walls reflect sunlight. There is little shade. Your clothes become uncomfortable. You keep moving. At some point, you begin to understand that endurance is not the same thing as strength. A very strong person can lift a heavy object once. A worker needs to lift, carry, lower, recover, and repeat. The challenge is not the single moment. It is the accumulation. One load does not defeat you. 20 might. 50 might. And the next day, you have to start again. You reach a market where merchants are arranging their goods. Your load is finally delivered. You straighten your back. The relief is immediate. Then you notice the ground beneath your feet. Your legs feel heavy. You have walked much farther than you expected. And you still have to return. There is no vehicle waiting to take you home. You walk. The city looks different now. Morning's energy has become afternoon fatigue. Some workers are still busy, others are closing their stalls. Children move through side streets. Animals wander between people. The sun begins to lower. You pass the same fountain you noticed earlier. This time, you stop. Water is available. You drink. The coolness feels extraordinary. You splash some water onto your face. For a moment, you simply stand there. Then another porter arrives. He is carrying a load. You watch him. He moves with practiced ease. He does not seem to struggle as much as you did. Perhaps he has been doing this for years. You realize that the job is not only physical. It is learned. The city itself becomes part of your knowledge. You learn its streets, its slopes, its markets, its rhythms. You learn when traffic becomes heavier. You learn where to pause. You learn how to carry efficiently. You learn how to protect your balance. And you learn that experience can make difficult work look almost effortless. Almost, because the worker's body still pays the price. As evening approaches, the streets begin to quiet. Lanterns appear. The sky turns deep blue. The stone buildings lose their harsh daytime brightness. You finally return to where you are staying. You lower yourself onto a simple sleeping place. For several moments you do not move. Your arms feel tired. Your shoulders feel tired. Your legs feel tired. Even your hands seem tired. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you may have another load, then another, and another. You begin to understand why the hardest jobs of the Ottoman Empire were rarely about one terrifying moment. They were about repetition. The empire needed people who could keep going. And tomorrow, you will meet workers whose job takes that idea even deeper. Because while you carried goods through Istanbul's streets, other workers were carrying something much heavier. The earth itself. Tomorrow, you are going underground. And the darkness will not be nearly as peaceful as you might hope. The mine entrance is darker than you expected. You stand at the edge of the opening, while the morning light remains bright behind you. In front of you, the tunnel disappears into shadow. A worker carrying a small lamp walks ahead. You follow. Almost immediately the world changes. The sounds of the countryside become distant. The wind disappears. The open sky is gone. There is only stone, timber, earth, and the quiet rhythm of footsteps. You are entering a workplace where the walls surround you completely. Mining existed in various parts of the Ottoman Empire, with different minerals extracted in different regions and periods. The exact methods and conditions varied enormously. Some operations were relatively organized, while others could be difficult and dangerous. Your particular shift is going to be unpleasant enough. The tunnel narrows. You lower your head. The air feels different underground. There's little natural light, and every movement depends on lamps or other sources of illumination. You quickly discover that darkness changes how you work. Above ground, you can see where you are going. Here, you can only see what the small light reveals. A few steps ahead, then another few. Everything beyond that remains black. You are given a simple tool. The work begins. You strike the rock. A small sound echoes through the tunnel. Strike. Pause. Move. Strike again. The task is repetitive, just like rowing and carrying. But now there is an additional problem. The space around you is limited. You cannot simply swing a tool however you want. You have to control your movement carefully. The roof is above you. The walls are beside you. Other workers are nearby. The ground beneath your feet is uneven. You begin working. The sound of metal against stone fills the tunnel. Each strike sends a vibration through your arms. You pause to adjust your position. Then continue. After a while, you look toward the entrance. It feels impossibly far away. That is when you realize how psychologically strange underground labor can be. Even when nothing dramatic happens, the environment itself creates tension. You cannot see the sky. You cannot see distant mountains. You cannot watch clouds moving overhead. You cannot tell whether the weather outside has changed. Your entire world has become the small area illuminated by your lamp. You keep working. The other workers do the same. Some carry material. Some break rock. Some handle tools. The system depends on cooperation. Material must be removed. Tools must be used. Paths must remain usable. Workers must communicate. And everyone must pay attention to the environment around them. Mining has always required caution because underground spaces can present hazards that are difficult to predict or control. The Ottoman period was no exception. Conditions depended on the particular mine, its depth, geology, technology, management, and historical period. You do not need a dramatic accident to understand the difficulty. The darkness is enough. The cramped space is enough. The physical repetition is enough. You continue striking. Your arms become tired. The sound becomes hypnotic. You stop thinking about the whole shift. You focus on the next movement, then the next. The same strategy that helped you survive rowing now helps you here. One task at a time. You look at your lamp. Its light is small, far smaller than you would prefer. You suddenly miss sunlight, not because you need to see the beautiful Ottoman skyline. You simply want to know that the sky exists. You continue. Someone nearby calls out. You stop. The workers listen. A small adjustment is made. Then the work resumes. The communication is practical and brief. There is no reason for unnecessary conversation. The mind requires attention. You notice the temperature. It is different from the surface. The cool underground air is welcome at first. Then the physical work makes you warm. Your clothing becomes uncomfortable. Dust settles on your hands. Your face feels gritty. You would like to wash. There is no convenient shower waiting nearby. So you continue. Eventually, you are asked to carry material toward the entrance. This sounds easier. It is not. The path is uneven. The load is awkward. You have to watch your footing. Your lamp provides only limited visibility. You move slowly, step, step, step. The darkness surrounds you. Then, suddenly, you see something beautiful, light, natural daylight. The entrance is ahead. You walk faster. The brightness grows. You step outside. For several seconds, the sunlight feels almost too bright. You blink. The sky is enormous. The air feels fresh. You can see trees, clouds, distant hills. You take a deep breath. You never thought ordinary daylight could feel this luxurious. Then someone tells you to go back. You stare at them. They point toward the tunnel. Of course, your shift is not finished. You return underground. This time, you understand something. The hardest part of historical work is sometimes not the task itself. It is the lack of control. You cannot simply decide that you would prefer better lighting. You cannot order new equipment from a website. You cannot send a message saying you are working from home today. You cannot open a door and step into a bright modern building. The workplace is what it is. And you adapt. You continue. Hours pass. Eventually, your body begins to settle into the rhythm. The repeated sound of tools becomes familiar. Your steps become more careful. You learn where the floor is uneven. You learn how much room you need to swing the tool. You learn how to move around other workers. Experience begins turning an unfamiliar environment into a workplace. That does not make it easy. It simply makes you less inefficient. And efficiency matters when every movement costs energy. You think about the people who might spend years doing this. Their knowledge would be practical. They would know the stone, the tools, the tunnels, the routines, the warning signs, the safest paths, the quickest ways to move material. The mind would become a map inside their minds. You are still a beginner. Every corner looks the same. Every tunnel seems to lead into another tunnel. You begin to understand why experienced workers were valuable. The job was not simply about physical strength. It required familiarity with a difficult environment. Eventually, the shift ends. You walk toward the surface one final time. The daylight is fading. The sky is turning gold. You step outside. The evening air feels wonderful. You sit on a nearby stone. For a while, you simply watch the sunset. After spending hours beneath the ground, the open sky feels enormous. You realize that you have now experienced 3 different forms of Ottoman labor. The palace kitchen taught you repetition through heat. The galley taught you repetition through movement. The streets taught you repetition through carrying. The mine adds darkness, and tomorrow the empire will introduce you to another workplace, where the problem is not darkness. It is smell. A lot of smell. You are heading toward the tanners. And once you arrive, you may discover that the palace kitchen suddenly seems wonderfully fragrant. You know something is wrong before you even enter the tannery. The smell reaches you first. It drifts through the street long before you see the workshop. You slow down. The air carries an unpleasant mixture of animal hides, water, smoke, and chemicals used in the tanning process. You look at the building ahead. This is where you will work. You briefly consider turning around. Unfortunately, historical employment opportunities are not famous for respecting your preferences. You step inside. The tannery is different from the palace kitchen, the galley, the streets, and the mine. Here, the work is specialized. Leather must be processed through multiple stages before it becomes useful material. Animal hides arrive. They are cleaned, prepared, treated, worked, dried, and transformed. The finished product may become shoes, belts, bags, saddles, clothing, book coverings, or countless other objects. But the beautiful finished leather hides an unpleasant amount of work. Your first task involves moving hides. You look at the pile. It is larger than expected. You grab one. It is heavy. You carry it toward a working area. The smell becomes stronger. You try not to breathe too deeply. This strategy lasts approximately 3 seconds. Then you realize that you are going to be here for hours. The workers around you seem far less bothered. That is partly because they are accustomed to it. You are not. You place the hide where you are instructed. Then another arrives. And another. The work begins. You help clean and prepare the material. Water is used. Tools are used. The hides must be handled carefully. Different stages require different techniques. This is not random labor. Experienced leatherworkers know exactly what they are doing. You begin watching. The worker beside you handles the hide with confidence. He knows where to cut, where to pull, how to stretch, how to inspect the material, how to recognize imperfections. You try to copy him. Your first attempt is slow. His is fast. Your second is slightly better. He has already finished another. You begin to understand how skill changes physical work. A beginner may use too much force. An experienced worker knows how much is necessary. A beginner may waste movement. An experienced worker has developed efficient motions through years of repetition. The difference is not always dramatic. But over hundreds of working days, small improvements matter enormously. You continue. The workshop is damp. Water is everywhere. Wooden containers and vats occupy part of the space. Tools lie on work surfaces. Hides hang or rest in different stages of preparation. The floor is not exactly the cleanest place in Istanbul. You step carefully. Your clothing begins to pick up the smell. There is no escaping it. You look toward the street. The outside world suddenly seems wonderfully fresh. A breeze moves through the doorway. You breathe deeply, then return to work. The tanning process itself requires patience. Leather cannot simply be produced instantly. The hides have to undergo treatment that changes their structure and makes them more durable and useful. Historical tanning methods varied, but the work could involve prolonged preparation, soaking, scraping, treating, stretching, and drying. This means the worker is not simply making an object. The worker is managing a process. Timing matters. Condition matters. Experience matters. You begin working on another hide. You scrape away unwanted material. The movement is repetitive. Pull, scrape, adjust. Pull again. Your wrists begin to tire. Your shoulders tighten. You realize that even specialized crafts require physical endurance. Skill does not eliminate fatigue. It simply allows you to work more effectively. You look at the finished leather nearby. It is smooth, strong, useful. You can imagine it becoming a fine pair of shoes, a saddle, a belt, perhaps the cover of an important book. You find yourself impressed. Then you remember what it looked like when it arrived. The transformation is remarkable. But the person buying the finished product will probably never think about the tannery. They will simply see leather. That is another hidden feature of historical labor. Finished objects erase the work that created them. A polished shoe hides the animal hide. A beautifully bound book hides the leather worker. A sturdy saddle hides hours of preparation. The object becomes visible. The labor disappears. You continue working. By midday, the smell has become almost background noise. Almost. You have adapted enough that you can focus on the task. Your hands move more confidently. You begin understanding the rhythm. Pick up, inspect, prepare, scrape, stretch, move, repeat. The same pattern appears again. You realize that the jobs you have experienced are surprisingly connected. The palace kitchen depended on repetition. The galley depended on rhythm. The porter depended on endurance. The mine depended on concentration. The tannery depends on all four. You need strength. You need patience. You need coordination. You need attention, and you need to tolerate the environment. The afternoon becomes warm. The smell becomes stronger again. You wonder whether your clothing will ever recover. Probably not. You step outside briefly. The sunlight feels pleasant. The street smells better. Even the animals seem less offensive now. You take a breath, then return inside. The work continues. A senior craftsman checks the leather. He runs his hand across the surface. He examines the texture. He notices something you would have missed. He adjusts the material. You watch closely. This is how knowledge passes between generations, not necessarily through written manuals, through observation, practice, correction, repetition. You make another attempt. This time, the movement is better. The craftsman gives a small approving gesture. You feel strangely proud. You have finally done something correctly. Then he hands you another hide. Apparently, congratulations have a very short lifespan. You continue until the light begins to fade. The tannery changes character in the evening. The workshop becomes quieter. Tools are cleaned. Materials are organized. Workers begin finishing their tasks. The smell remains. It has no intention of leaving. You step outside. The cool evening air feels wonderful. You walk a short distance away, then stop. You can still smell the tannery. You laugh quietly. The Ottoman Empire has now taught you an important lesson. Sometimes surviving a job means surviving the environment around the job. You think back to the palace kitchen. At least that smelled like food. You think about the galley. At least there was fresh sea air. You think about the mine. At least underground there was no tannery. You are beginning to develop a strange appreciation for every previous workplace. But tomorrow will be different again. The empire has roads to repair, bridges to maintain, public works to construct, and all of them require people willing to lift stone, move earth, dig, carry, and keep working beneath the open sky. You look toward the road. Somewhere beyond the city, workers are already preparing for another day. And you are going with them. The tannery disappears behind you as you leave Istanbul. For a while, the road feels almost peaceful. You walk beneath an open sky, and after spending so much time inside workshops, kitchens, ships, and mines, the fresh air feels strangely luxurious, but the peaceful feeling does not last. Ahead, you see the workers. They are standing beside a rough stretch of road where the surface has broken apart. Stones lie scattered nearby. Wooden carts wait beside piles of earth. Simple tools rest against a low wall. You already know what this means. You are here to work on the road. At first, you imagine that road construction will be easier than mining. At least you can see the sky. That is true. But the sky does not make the stones lighter. Your first task is to move rocks. You pick one up. It is awkward rather than enormous. You carry it toward the road. Set it down. Return. Pick up another. Carry. Set down. You have now discovered the Ottoman version of a conveyor belt. Unfortunately, the conveyor belt is you. The work is repetitive. Roads require materials. Materials need to be transported. Stone needs to be positioned. Earth needs to be moved. Surfaces need to be leveled. Workers need to repair damage caused by weather and constant use. And because roads connect towns, markets, military routes, agricultural areas, and major cities, maintaining them can be an important public responsibility. You look at the road ahead. It stretches through the countryside. Travelers pass occasionally. A cart moves slowly over the uneven surface. A group of animals follows another road user. Every person who passes benefits from the road. Very few stop to think about who built it. You do now. You lift another stone. Your hands tighten around its rough surface. You carry it. The sun climbs higher. The road becomes warmer. Dust rises whenever a cart passes. It settles on your clothing. You brush it away. A few minutes later, there is more. You stop trying. The dust has won. You continue working. Some workers use simple tools to break or shape material. Others transport it. The division of labor makes the process more efficient. You watch an experienced worker. He uses his tool with controlled movements. Strike, turn, strike, move. He wastes little energy. You attempt the same technique. Your first effort is clumsy. The tool lands badly. You adjust. Try again. Better. This is becoming familiar. Every difficult job seems to contain a hidden skill. The beginner thinks the job is about strength. The experienced worker knows it is about technique. Use the right movement, at the right angle, with the right amount of force, then repeat. You continue. A cart arrives carrying more material. The workers unload it. You help, stone by stone. The cart becomes lighter. The road becomes fuller. The work slowly transforms the landscape. That is what makes construction different from some of your earlier jobs. You can actually see the result. At the palace kitchen, food disappeared. On the galley, the ship moved across water. As a porter, goods simply changed locations. Here, the environment itself changes. A rough road becomes smoother. A damaged section becomes usable again. A bridge becomes stronger. A difficult route becomes easier for the next traveler. The work remains exhausting, but there is something satisfying about seeing progress. You pause and look behind you. The section you worked on looks better, not perfect, but better. Then you look ahead. There is still a lot to do, much more than you hoped. You return to work. The day grows hotter. The open sky is beautiful, but there is little shade. Your shoulders ache. Your hands become dusty. Your clothing looks nothing like it did when you arrived. You are beginning to develop a consistent historical wardrobe. Dust, smoke, leather smell, and occasionally sea salt. You wonder if this is what historians mean when they say someone had a difficult working life. Probably. A worker beside you gestures toward a water container. You drink. The water is warm. You do not care. Warm water is still water. You pour a little over your hands. Then return to the road. The work continues into the afternoon. A group of travelers passes. They move along the repaired section. Their journey is slightly easier because of the work you have done. One traveler looks down, then ahead, then continues. No one applauds. No one thanks you. That is normal. Infrastructure is usually noticed most when it fails. A good road becomes invisible. A broken road becomes everyone's problem. You begin thinking about the empire as a giant machine. Cities are connected by roads. Ports connect to markets. Markets connect to workshops. Workshops connect to customers. Farms feed towns. Rivers and seas connect regions. Messages move between officials. Armies travel. Merchants travel. Pilgrims travel. Ordinary people travel. None of this works smoothly without infrastructure. And infrastructure requires workers. People with shovels. People with carts. People with tools. People willing to spend long days doing work that may not be remembered. You lift another stone. You carry it. Set it down. Return. The afternoon light begins to soften. At last, the supervisor signals that the main work is finished for the day. You stop. Your body feels heavy. You look at the repaired road. It is not magnificent. It is not a palace. It will never appear in a grand painting. But it will be used. Tomorrow, someone will walk across it. A cart will pass. A horse will step over the stones. A traveler will continue toward another town. And they may never know that you were here. You start walking toward the workers' resting place. The countryside is quieter now. Birds move through the trees. The wind passes over the grass. The sunset turns the road golden. For the first time all day, you are not carrying anything. That feels wonderful. You sit beneath a tree. Your hands are still dusty. Your arms are tired. Your feet hurt. But the air is cool. You watch the last light disappear. Tomorrow will bring another kind of labor. You will leave the road behind and enter the fields. There, the work will depend on weather, seasons, soil, animals, and the simple fact that crops do not care how tired you are. If you want food tomorrow, someone has to work today. And tomorrow, that someone is you. You wake before sunrise because the fields do not care whether you are tired. The village is still quiet. The sky is dark blue. A few stars remain visible above the rooftops, and the air has that cool feeling that disappears as soon as the sun rises. You sit up slowly. Your body remembers yesterday. Your shoulders are stiff. Your hands are sore. Your feet are tired. For one beautiful moment, you consider staying where you are. Then you remember the field. You stand. Outside, the village is beginning to move. Someone is preparing an animal. Another worker carries a basket. A wooden cart creaks somewhere in the darkness. You follow the others toward the fields. The road is quiet now. Yesterday you repaired roads so other people could travel. Today you are traveling across one to reach the land that feeds them. The field appears as the sky begins turning gray. It stretches farther than you expected. You look across it. There is no dramatic machinery waiting. No engine. No tractor. No convenient button. There is only soil, animals, wooden tools, and you. Agriculture in the Ottoman Empire varied enormously depending on region, climate, crops, landholding arrangements, and period. But for many rural workers, farming was physically demanding and deeply dependent on nature. You are about to discover just how little control you have over nature. Your first task is preparing the soil. You take hold of a simple agricultural tool. It is heavier than it looks. You push it into the earth. The soil resists. You push harder. It moves. You pull back. Repeat. The movement quickly becomes tiring. You continue. Push, pull, step, push, pull, step. The rhythm is familiar. Every historical job seems to have one. But farming has something the mind did not. The field is enormous. There is no tunnel wall telling you where the job ends. You look ahead. More soil. You look behind. More soil. You begin to understand why agricultural work could consume entire days. You are not simply doing a task. You are working across space. A small movement repeated thousands of times becomes a day's labor. The sun rises. The temperature begins to climb. Your morning coolness disappears. Sweat forms. You wipe your forehead. The work continues. Nearby, another worker handles the animal. The animal moves slowly. You guide it. The plow cuts through the earth. The soil turns. The smell of fresh earth rises around you. There is something strangely peaceful about it. For a moment, you enjoy the rhythm. Then the animal stops. You wait. It does not move. You encourage it. Nothing. You try again. The animal looks at you with complete indifference. You begin to suspect that the animal has a stronger work-life balance than you do. Eventually, it moves. The plow continues. You follow. Hour after hour. The field changes gradually. At first, you cannot see much difference. Later, the rows become visible. The earth has been prepared. Seeds can eventually be planted. But planting is only the beginning. You will need water. You will need favorable weather. You will need protection from pests and animals. You will need patience. And above all, you will need luck. Because farming has always contained an uncomfortable truth. You can work incredibly hard and still lose the harvest. Rain can arrive too late. Rain can arrive too heavily. A dry season can damage crops. Storms can destroy fields. Pests can spread. Animals can break through boundaries. Disease can affect crops or livestock. The farmer works. Nature decides. That uncertainty makes agricultural labor psychologically different from many other jobs. If you are a porter, you can see the load. If you are a mason, you can see the wall. If you are a leather worker, you can inspect the hide. But a farmer plants something beneath the soil and waits. The result is hidden. You keep working. By midday, the sun is high. The field offers almost no protection. Your clothes become dusty. Your hands become rough. Your back aches from repeated bending and lifting. You stop briefly. A worker opens a container of food. The meal is simple. You sit in the shade of a tree. The food tastes better because you are hungry. You eat slowly. There is no luxury, but there is also no need for luxury. After physical labor, even simple food feels satisfying. You drink water, then look toward the field. It is still there, waiting. You sigh, back to work. The afternoon passes. You carry baskets. You move material. You help with planting. You repeat movements until they become automatic. The field slowly becomes organized. Rows appear. The work has a visible shape now. You begin imagining the future crop. Perhaps grain. Perhaps vegetables. Perhaps another crop suited to the region. The exact harvest depends on where you are and what is being grown. But the principle remains. Food begins with someone preparing soil. You had never thought about that before. You simply ate food. Now you understand that every loaf, bowl, or meal rests on an enormous chain of labor. Someone planted, someone watered, someone harvested, someone transported, someone stored, someone processed, someone cooked. You have now touched several links in that chain, and every link requires workers. The afternoon light becomes softer. You are exhausted, but the field is beginning to look different. You stand for a moment and look across it. The rows stretch toward the horizon. The village sits beyond them. Smoke rises from a distant chimney. Animals move slowly near the houses. The evening is approaching. You walk back with the other workers. Your feet feel heavy. The day's work is finished, for now. But tomorrow will bring another problem. The crop has to survive. You can already feel the uncertainty. You have worked hard. You have planted. You have prepared. But you cannot control the sky. You look upward. Clouds are gathering. You wonder whether they will bring the rain the fields need, or whether they will bring too much. You keep walking. The village lights begin appearing in the distance. You are tired enough to sleep immediately. But tomorrow, you will learn that farming is not only about growing crops. It is also about animals. And animals, unlike crops, can look directly into your eyes while refusing to cooperate.